My math teacher was so bad at math, I ended up teaching the class. Mr. Collins walked into our 7th grade classroom on the first day looking nervous as hell. He kept sweating and fumbling with his calculator for basic problems when he tried to show us how to multiply fractions. He wrote 2,345 equals 615 on the board. That's wrong. It should be 815. I knew it, but I didn't want to embarrass him on day one. But then it got worse. Way worse. During our first quiz, he gave us a word problem that said, if Jake has 12 apples and gives away 5, how many does he have left? Simple, right? 7 apples. But Mr. Collins marked my answer wrong and wrote 17 as the correct answer. When I asked him about it, he said, well, he gave them away, so you add them together. I went home confused and asked my older sister, Rachel, who was in high school. She looked at the quiz and nearly spit out her drink, laughing. Your teacher added instead of subtracted. That's insane. The next week, things got even more ridiculous. We were learning long division, and Mr. Collins couldn't figure out how to divide 144 by 12. He kept getting 14 as his answer instead of 12. Half the class was confused, but some kids started raising their hands to point out his mistakes. He'd get flustered and say stuff like, there are multiple ways to solve problems. No, there aren't. Math isn't like English where you can have different interpretations. 2 plus 2 is 4, not 5. By October, I started bringing my textbook home every night to double-check his lessons. I'd find mistakes constantly. When we learned about percentages, he taught us that 25% of 40 was 65. I calculated it myself. It's 10. I even showed him the textbook explanation, but he insisted his method was more advanced. During lunch, kids started asking me to explain the homework because they couldn't understand Mr. Collins' explanations. I'd draw out the problems, step by step on napkins and scrap paper. Pretty soon, I had a whole group meeting me in the library every day. The breaking point came during parent-teacher conferences in November. My mom sat down with Mr. Collins to discuss my grades, and he told her I was challenging his authority by questioning his methods. Mom asked him to show her how he solved a basic algebra problem we'd been working on. He wrote 3 by 2 by 11 on paper and said, x equals 4. My mom, who works as an accountant, immediately knew that was wrong. X equals 3. She asked him to show his work, and he got defensive, claiming there were different approaches. That night, Mom called the school principal, Mrs. Patterson. She explained what happened and mentioned that other parents had been complaining about their kids coming home confused about math. The next Monday, Mrs. Patterson showed up during our math class unannounced. Mr. Collins was teaching us about area and perimeter, but he kept mixing up the formulas. He said the area of a rectangle was length plus width when it's actually length time width. I couldn't take it anymore. I raised my hand and politely said, Mr. Collins, I think there might be a mistake. The textbook says area is length time width, not plus. He turned red and snapped. The textbook isn't always right. Have a degree in education. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward and asked if she could see the textbook. She flipped to the page about area and read the definition out loud. The room went dead silent. Mr. Collins, could I speak with you outside for a moment? She said. They left the classroom, and we could hear muffled arguing in the hallway. When Mr. Collins came back, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. He told us to work quietly on our worksheets for the rest of class. 2 days later, we had a substitute teacher, then another one. Finally, Mrs. Patterson announced that Mr. Collins had decided to pursue other opportunities and wouldn't be returning. Our new teacher, Mrs. Kim, was amazing. She'd actually taught high school math for 15 years before transferring to middle school. On her first day, she asked us to show her what we'd been learning. When she saw our notebooks full of Mr. Collins' wrong methods, she looked shocked. "We're going to need to start over with a lot of this material," she said. "Some of what you've been taught is mathematically incorrect." For the rest of the year, Mrs. Kim would ask me to help other students during class, since I'd been teaching myself from the textbook for months. Mr. Collins walked into our 7th grade classroom on the first day of school, looking like he was in the wrong building. He wore a wrinkled blue shirt soaked in sweat under the arms, his tie half-twisted, and he carried an old calculator like it was a life raft. When he introduced himself, his voice cracked twice. We all thought maybe he was just nervous. First day jitters, right? That hope vanished in about 5 minutes. He was trying to show us how to multiply fractions. He wrote something like 2 3/4 times 5 equals 615 on the board. I stared at it in disbelief. First of all, that answer doesn't even make sense. Where did 615 come from? The actual answer is 13.75 or 13 3/4 if you go by mixed numbers. I figured maybe it was a slip. We all mess up under pressure. But then came the word problem quiz. It said, Jake has 12 apples and gives away 5. How many does he have left? Put the obvious answer. 7 apples, marked it wrong. In big red ink, he wrote, correct. Answer 17. I raised my hand, cautiously. Sir, isn't it subtraction? 12 minus 5. He squinted at the quiz, then looked up and said with full confidence, well, he gave away 5, so we add them together. 12 plus 5 equals 17. I froze. Was he serious? I felt like I was in a prank show. I went home completely rattled. That night, I showed the quiz to my older sister Rachel, who was in 10th grade. She literally choked on her soda and said, "Your teacher added instead of subtracted. That's insane. That's not just a small mistake, that's like mathematically dangerous." I tried to brush it off. Maybe he had a bad day. But the bad days never stopped. The following week, he attempted to teach us long division. He tried dividing 144 by 12, but kept saying the answer was 14. I remember looking around the room. Everyone was confused, but too polite or too scared to speak up. A few kids started raising their hands cautiously, pointing out his mistake. But instead of correcting himself, he said, "There are multiple ways to solve math problems. No, just no." This wasn't English class. There's no poetic interpretation for numbers. 2 plus 2 will always be 4, no matter how flexible your teaching method is. By the end of September, I started bringing my math textbook home every single night, not to study ahead, but to fact-check his lessons. I'd sit with a notebook and redo every example he gave us in class. It became a habit. I found mistakes in almost every lesson. He once told us that 25% of 40 was 65. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I walked up after class and showed him the correct solution. 25% of 40 is 10. He looked at me, unimpressed. That's the beginner way. I use a more advanced method. I couldn't even argue with that. What advanced method gives you the wrong answer? It wasn't just me. Other kids started struggling hard. During lunch, a few classmates would quietly ask, "Hey, can you explain question 3 from homework?" I didn't get it. I'd help them out on napkins, scrap paper, whatever I could find. Pretty soon, more students joined in. By mid-October, we were holding unofficial math tutoring sessions in the library during recess. I felt like a tiny, untrained teacher holding a classroom together with duct tape. Then came parent-teacher conferences in November. My mom, always polite and professional, sat across from Mr. Collins with a friendly smile. He greeted her nervously and then, without missing a beat, told her I had been challenging his authority. My mom raised an eyebrow. Challenging how? Well, he said, he constantly questions my teaching methods. So she asked, him to demonstrate a problem, just something simple. He wrote down 3x plus 2 times 11 and confidently said the answer was x equals 4. Now, my mom is an accountant. She stared at it for a second and calmly said, actually, based on PEMDAS, it should be x equals 3. He got defensive, saying math had evolved and his methods were alternative approaches. Mom didn't argue. She just nodded and said, thank you for your time. That night, she emailed the school principal, Mrs. Patterson, explaining what had happened and added that other parents were complaining too. Their kids were coming home more confused than when they left for school. On Monday morning, the math class started like any other. Mr. Collins was sweating again, trying to teach area and perimeter. He said, area is length plus width. I froze. Even the most math-averse kid knows area is length times width. I raised my hand. Mr. Collins, I think there's a mistake. The textbook says area is length times width. His face turned beet red. He slammed the marker down. The textbook isn't always right. I have a degree in education. That's when Mrs. Patterson, who had quietly entered the back of the room, stepped forward. Mr. Collins, may I see that textbook for a moment? She flipped it open to the exact page and read out loud, area equals length times width. You could hear a pin drop. Mr. Collins looked like someone had unplugged his soul. Mr. Collins, may I speak with you outside for a moment? They left the room. We heard muffled voices arguing, pleading, something serious. When he returned, he didn't say a word. He just told us to work quietly. 2 days later, we had a substitute teacher, then another. Then Mrs. Patterson called us together and made an announcement. Mr. Collins has decided to pursue other opportunities and will not be returning. No one cheered out loud, but the relief was visible on every kid's face. Then came Mrs. Kim, our new math teacher. She was sharp, confident, and calm. On her first day, she asked us to show her what we'd been learning. When she saw our notebooks filled with Mr. Collins' bizarre methods, her jaw tightened. She said gently, we're going to need to revisit a lot of this. Some of what you've been taught is mathematically incorrect. She wasn't mad at us, just determined to help. That day, she started from scratch. And surprisingly, she asked me to assist during lessons, helping others who still felt lost. By the end of the year, our class had gone from chaos to clarity. We understood fractions, decimals, algebra, and even some geometry. Mrs. Kim called me her junior ta. Looking back, I still can't believe how one teacher nearly derailed our entire math year. But I'm also kind of glad it happened. I learned way more than just numbers that year. I learned that standing up for what's right, even when it's awkward, matters. I learned that sometimes even a kid has to be the adult in the room. And I learned that when it comes to math, there are no alternative methods. Story 2, you still disappointed us, Max. My mom said, just leave. Now, I did. 3 months later, my dad asked, where's the rent? I replied, I thought I was out. So, I made 3 updates. At 6:17 p.m., my phone buzzed 14 times. The last message said the house deal fell through. I closed my laptop, and then, you still disappointed us, Max. My mom said, just leave now. I did. I remember the way her voice cut through the room like glass, sharp and deliberate. My duffel bag was already half sipped on the floor, and I hadn't even said a word. My dad was sitting in his recliner, staring at the blank TV screen, not moving. Not blinking, just frozen. No explanation. I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm, even though my throat was tight. You know what you did? She snapped, arms crossed, face unreadable. I knew exactly what she meant. I didn't lend my sister $12,000. Not after she'd already defaulted on the $5,000 I gave her last year. Not after I found out she used it to take a spontaneous trip to Yali, while texting me crying face emojis about rent being impossible this month. So, I said no. One single no after years of yes. That's when the tide turned. "Fine," I muttered. "I'll leave." My mother didn't flinch. My father finally blinked, but said nothing. I grabbed my laptop, slammed the zipper shut, and walked out the front door without looking back. The air outside was cold. January cold. Where your breath hangs in front of you like fog. And as I stood there on the porch, all I could think was that it? Just like that, 3 months passed. I moved into a small studio on the edge of town, the kind where you can touch the stove from your bed. But it was mine. No judgmental glances over the dinner table. No guilt-tripping texts asking, "How can you turn your back on your family?" Then, at exactly 6:17 p.m., my phone busts once, then again, then again. 14 notifications, all from my dad. The last message read, "The house deal fell through." I stared at it for a full minute. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Then I closed my laptop. And then I made tea. Chamomile, same box I took when I left. The kettle hissed like it understood the silence I needed. I poured the water, sat by the window, and just breathed. No noise, no drama, just peace. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I owed anyone anything. Only myself. When I was 15, my mom used to tell people I was the reliable one. Not the smart one like my sister Cassie. Not the brave one like my cousin who joined the Marines. Just reliable. Translation: boring, predictable. Someone they could lean on until he collapsed under the weight. By 22, I was paying a third of the household bills. By 24, it was half. By 26, it was everything. Electricity, rent, groceries. Even the internet Cassie needed for her online coaching business that never once produced a cent. I didn't complain, not at first. I was earning good money as a systems analyst, freelancing in my off hours, and saving as much as I could for a down payment on my own place. But every time I got close, another family emergency popped up. Dad needed dental surgery. $13,800. Cassie missed another credit card payment. $2,100. Mom's emotional support dog had hip dysplasia. $1,900. It never ended. They praised me when I paid. Guilt tripped me when I hesitated. "You know, Cassie is trying her best." Mom would say, eyes wide, like I was the villain. "She's just not wired like you. She needs support." Support? She needed boundaries. She dropped out of college, skipped rent 3 times with 3 different roommates. And now she was living rent-free in the same house I paid for, complaining that I was too controlling for asking her to contribute. But I kept my mouth shut. That's what they expected. Max will handle it. Max always handles it. Until the day I didn't. It started with Cassie asking for $12,000, not even a loan. She didn't pretend anymore. "It's for a coaching retreat in Bali," she said, like it was obvious. A mindset reset. This could really be the launch I need. I laughed. I genuinely thought she was joking. She wasn't. When I said no, just a simple, calm no, she looked at me like I'd spit in her food. The next day, I came home from work and found my name removed from the joint utility accounts. No warning, no explanation, just gone. A week later, Mom told me to move out. "It's just better if you take some time," she said carefully. "The energy in the house isn't good. You've been so tense lately." Tense, right? Because paying everyone's bills while being told I'm not doing enough is just so relaxing. So, I packed. Quietly, no fight, no scene, just a bag. My laptop and that chamomile tea and I vanished for 3 months. Not a single message. Not from Mom, not from Dad. Cassie posted Instagram stories of her healing journey in a cabin 2 hours outside the city. Paid for by who? I don't know, but it wasn't me. Then came that text from Dad. 14 buzzes, 1 sentence. The house deal fell through. Translation: the house I'd been paying rent on for 4 years was now being sold out from under them. But the buyer backed out. That trip used up what little we had left Mom had earmarked for the mortgage. Utilities were overdue. Their credit shot. They needed me, and I was gone. The first message from Dad was followed by silence. No. How are you? No. Can we talk? Just where's the rent, Max? As if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't been shoved out the door like a stranger. As if my name still magically appeared on the payment receipts for a house I no longer lived in. I didn't respond for 2 days. Then another message. We're behind on the mortgage, utilities too. Cassie's trying to fix it, but she's overwhelmed. Cassie trying to fix it. That was rich. I knew what that meant. She probably made a 3-slide Canva presentation titled Financial Alignment Through Spiritual Awareness and thought she was applying for a job at Goldman Sachs. So, I replied. I thought I was out. No emojis, no smile, just that. 10 minutes later, Mom called. I didn't answer. She called again. Then Cassie texted something long with a lot of hearts. And this doesn't have to be ugly nonsense. Then Dad messaged me directly. We need to talk, please. So, I agreed. One last conversation on my terms. We met at a neutral spot, a cheap diner, halfway between my studio and their house. I got there first, ordered black coffee, and sat by the window. I could already feel the pressure in my chest tightening, like a storm cloud settling just beneath my ribs. They arrived together. Mom, with her tight smile, Cassie in sunglasses like she was dodging paparazzi, and Dad looking like he'd aged 10 years and 3 months. None of them ordered anything, just sat down, eyes flicking nervously between each other like it was some kind of intervention. Mac's dad started. We're in a tight spot. You know the buyer fell through? Yeah, I said. Saw the text. Cassie leaned in. It's not fair how this all fell on us. The bank's being aggressive, and I tried to get a loan, but my credit, I snorted loudly. Her jaw snapped shut. Mom jumped in. We didn't mean for things to get like this. You were always so generous. We? You thought I'd keep paying, I said flatly. Even after you kicked me out, there was a pause. That heavy kind where no one wants to admit the obvious truth. You weren't kicked out, Dad muttered. You left after Mom told me to. I snapped after Cassie said I was the problem for saying no after they relied on me financially without ever asking. What I needed? Cassie rolled her eyes. Oh, come on, Max. You're being dramatic. Am I? I leaned forward. Because last I checked, I was covering rent, groceries, phone bills, the internet you streamed your fake coaching videos on, and still being told I wasn't supportive. It was just a rough patch. Mom whispered for 5 years. I laughed. No, you saw me as the backup plan, the safety net, until I said no. Then I became the enemy. Dad's voice hardened. We're still your family, and I'm still the one who paid your mortgage, fixed your plumbing, paid Cassie's phone bill for 8 months, and got treated like garbage for drawing one boundary. No one spoke, so I kept going. You want rent? Here's my offer. I'll buy the house outright. Cash? I've saved enough. But under one condition. Their eyes lit up, desperation morphing into hope. You all move out today. What? Mom blinked. You heard me. You move out today. You wanted me out? Fine. Now you get what you wanted permanently. You're being cruel, Mom said. No, I replied. I'm being free. Cassie exploded. This is messed up. You wouldn't even have that money if we hadn't let you live there rent-free after college. I turned to her slowly. You mean the house where I paid $1,200 a month while you were buying crystals and incense with my cash? You mean the favor that cost me almost 50 grand? You're right. Thank you, Cassie. Your generosity is unmatched. Dad stood up, furious now. Don't talk to her like that, or what? I stood too. You've said I disappointed you enough times. I got the message. You already threw me away once. This isn't about reconciliation. It's about reclaiming stability. And I'm not your lifeboat anymore. I dropped a folder on the table. A printed purchase. Offer, full price. Closing in 10 days. Dad stared at it like it was a loaded gun. You really did this, he muttered. No, you did this, I said. I just finally decided to stop bleeding for people who watch me die and ask for more. And with that, I left. No hugs, no goodbyes, just the bell above the diner door jingling as I walked out into the cold. I expected backlash. I expected a storm. Of texts, missed calls, maybe a drive-by guilt trip with Mom sobbing on my doorstep holding a pie. But what I got was silence. The deal went through in 10 days, just like I promised. I signed the paperwork at the lawyer's office and transferred the funds from my savings. Years of overwork, skipped vacations, side hustles, and saying no to myself so I could say yes to them. Funny how that works. Now the house was mine completely. No mortgage, no tenants, no history. At least not one I had to live with anymore. I changed the locks the same night the deal closed. New code on the garage, new Wi-Fi name, fresh start home. Petty, sure. But after everything, it felt right. I took the first week to gut the place. Cleared every corner of her decorative items, crystals, vision boards, healing mats she never used. Tossed all the dusty live laugh. Love signs Mom clung to, like they made her a better person. I even stripped the walls of those framed family photos. Me in the background smiling politely while Cassie stood center stage. Like a B-list celebrity at a red carpet, the garbage man hated me that week. I tipped him $100. He earned it. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was personal. 4. The first time in my life, I was living in a space I didn't have to shrink inside. I could breathe, I could stretch out. I could blast music at 2 a.m. if I wanted. No one yelling from the hallway. No notes on the fridge asking me to lower the masculine energy. I got a new job too. Better pay, remote, fewer hours. No more late nights fixing code for ungrateful bosses. I took Fridays off, bought a dog, rescued Wiry Loud. I named him Cash. Every time he barked, it reminded me I'd finally kept some for myself. Then, about a month after closing, the messages started. First, it was Cassie. Long paragraph, 0 punctuation. Hey, can we talk? I think we should clear the air. This isn't what family does. I feel like you're acting out of ego and pain, and it's sad because I know you're better than this, Max. We all know it. I didn't reply then. Mom, I just want to understand what we did wrong. We were doing our best. Cassie's in therapy now. She's growing. No mention of an apology. No admission. Just a vague. We like I hadn't been living in a psychological pressure cooker for a decade. Then, Dad, just one line. This is what you call being a man. That one made me laugh. I screenshotted it, framed it, and hung it in my office under a little plaque. Retired. Provider, they tried harder after that. Mom dropped by once, knocked. I didn't open. She sat in her car for 20 minutes, probably crying. I watched from the window, felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just quiet. Cassie showed up a week later. New outfit, fake smile, oversized sunglasses. Said she wanted to talk. I opened the door just wide enough to say, "You had years." Then I closed it again. That night, I got another text. I missed the old you. I did, too. But he was dead, buried under years of unspoken resentment and overdraft fees. Then, 2 months later, came a twist I never saw coming. I was at the mailbox sorting through junk when I saw a letter. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note. You don't know me, but I think I'm your brother. I froze. The note continued. Said his name was Aiden. Said he'd been adopted. That he'd recently tracked down his biological mother, my mother. And she refused to talk. But DNA testing had done the rest. Half-brother born when I was 7. Apparently, while Dad was working late. He was also building a second life with another woman. Aiden had grown up in Ohio, raised by a single mom who never told him who his father was until her death. He only found out recently through a DNA ancestry kit. I sat down on the stairs and read the letter 3 times. The next day, I met Aiden. At a coffee shop. Same jawline, same nose. His eyes were mine, just calmer, gentler. We talked for hours about childhoods, family betrayal. He told me his mom passed away from cancer last year, that he never felt like he belonged anywhere. I thought meeting my birth father would give me answers, he said quietly. But when I found him, he told me not to contact him again, that it would ruin everything. I felt my stomach turn. It all made sense now. Why Dad always seemed to resent me. Why he treated Cassie like royalty and me like a burden. I was the reminder of his failures, his guilt, the child he couldn't abandon, so he punished me instead. But Aiden, he abandoned him easily. We sat in silence for a while. Then I said, "You want a house tour?" He smiled. That night, I opened the door to the home I once paid for, and for the first time ever, let in someone who actually felt like family. Aiden and I became close, fast. Brothers in blood, but strangers in memory. He didn't judge when I ranted. He didn't flinch when I shared everything. Cassie, the money, the manipulation, the eviction. He just listened. After 2 months, I offered him the guest room. It felt right. 2 sons cast out by the same man, building something real from the ruins. And then the next bomb dropped. I got an envelope in the mail. Thick, legal, hand-delivered. Inside was a letter from a lawyer. A trust not addressed to me, addressed to Aiden. Apparently, Aiden's mother had not only kept records of their communications with Dad, but she'd kept something else, too. A life insurance policy, not on her, on Dad. He'd secretly taken one out when Aiden was a toddler. And she never canceled it, never told him, just kept the premiums quietly paid for years through a secondary fund she set up with her estate. Probably revenge. Probably love. Maybe both. But the policy was ironclad. And now, after all the lies, all the silence, all the cruelty, Aiden was the sole beneficiary of $850,000. He looked stunned when he told me. He didn't even want me to exist, he said, staring at the check like it burned. But now I own a piece of him. I didn't know what to say. I poured 2 drinks. We sat in silence again. Then Aiden asked the question that twisted the knife in a different way. Do you want half? I laughed at first, thought he was joking. I'm serious, he said. You're the one who suffered because of him. You're the one he tortured to protect his image. If anyone deserves something for surviving that, it's you. And that's when it hit me. After everything, after being discarded, erased, used, and tossed, the only person who saw my value was the son he never even raised. So yeah, I took it. Not because I needed the money, but because it was finally something they couldn't take from me. It's been 365 days since I left that diner and left behind the boy who couldn't say no. A year since my mother told me to go. And I finally did. 12 months since I stopped financing the collapse of a family that saw me not as a son, but as a support. Beam. And here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Sometimes leaving your family is the most loving thing you can do for yourself. I didn't just walk away from a house. I walked away from a system. A system where Max paid. Max stayed quiet. Max fixed everything, and no one fixed him. I didn't expect peace to come wrapped in silence, but that's exactly how it arrived. No explosions. No dramatic closure, just the absence of need, of noise, of their voices in my head. Mom tried, of course. She sent messages on every milestone date. Cassie's son turned 3 today. He asked about you. He didn't. She involved him like she once did with me. We were just watching old family videos. You were such a sweet boy. A boy who grew up and stopped paying. That's the one you hate now. I never responded, not once. Dad never reached out. Not after the house, not after the confrontation. It's not even after he learned about Aiden. That part still gets me because what father learns he has another son and still disappears. Aiden changed. Everything. He moved in like he'd always belonged here. He painted the walls, rewired the lights, cooked dinner 3 nights a week. He built shelves without being asked, and never once made me feel small. We laughed more in 2 months than I had. In 10 years. But the real shift came when the insurance check landed. $850,000 from the same man who told Aiden he didn't exist. From the same man who told me I wasn't a man. At first, Aiden wanted to refuse it, but I said, no, it's ours. It's not about him. It's what we build from it. And so we built. We started with a legal fund, small, quiet, private, then a hotline, then a full nonprofit. Second Sons, a sanctuary for people like us, the forgotten givers, the silent backbones, the ones who were told that's just how family works and believed it until they broke. We paid for lawyers, helped people freeze joint bank accounts, set up emergency housing, launch workshops on setting boundaries with toxic relatives. Every time someone called crying and left calm, I felt something real. Every time someone messaged us saying, "You helped me leave," I healed a little more. That money didn't buy peace, but it bought the tools to fight for it. For people who never thought they had a choice, 6 months in, Cassie found out. She posted a rage rant on Instagram, said I stole her inheritance, said I weaponized abandonment. Weaponized. That's rich coming from someone who called herself a scarred soul who still feels for others while draining every account I ever opened. She even emailed Aiden directly, told him he should be ashamed. He replied with one sentence, "I only feel shame when I think of what Max went through without me." She didn't respond. Then came Mom. She showed up one morning. No warning. Just on the porch holding a casserole. I almost laughed. "Can we talk?" she asked. "No," I said, "please, just 5 minutes." So I stood in the doorway, silent. She looked around the house like it was a museum of betrayal. "You've changed it," she said. "Yeah," I replied. "I live here now. I remember when this was our home." I smiled cold. "That ended the day you told me to leave." She nodded slowly. "Cassie's not well. I know she wasn't well when you pushed me to fund her Bali retreat." She winced. "We made mistakes?" "No," I corrected. "This wasn't a one-time mistake. It kept repeating." Tears welled. Real ones. "I don't know. Didn't care." "I miss you," she whispered. "You miss what my presence provided," I said. "And I'm not giving it anymore." She didn't argue. She just nodded, placed the casserole on the porch step like some sacrificial offering, and walked away. I left it there until the raccoons took it. Aiden and I kept building. We traveled, spoke at universities, gave interviews anonymously, protecting our privacy, but spreading the truth. And then one day, Aiden handed me an envelope. "Don't open it until I leave," he said, grinning. He flew to New York to visit an old friend. I opened it inside a deed. Half the house in my name already. Yes, but now legally split. You kept me warm when my own blood left me in the cold. His note read, "Now this is yours too. Not because I owe you, because you saved me," I cried. For the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not from pain, not from rage, but from gratitude. We get postcards now from people we've helped. Single. Moms escaping guilt-heavy sons. Young men shutting down parents demanding rent money while refusing to say, "I'm proud of you." Every letter reminds me of who I used to be, of how far I've come, and of how far I'll never go back. So, here's my final message to anyone still stuck. You are not their financial plan. You are not their savior. You are not a villain for choosing. Peace, leave, rebuild. And when they call you cruel, smile, then build louder. Because sometimes healing doesn't look like forgiveness.